Hey everyone, welcome back to Six Path Weeb. You're tuning into the ultimate spot for anime fanfiction and deep dive storytelling. Today's feature is Naruko, Born of Thunder, Forged in Flame, Part 2. An epic continuation packed with emotion, power, and plot twists that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Disclaimer, all content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. Full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Now, let's dive in. The storm is rising. And Naruko's fire has only just begun. Konoha Market District. Naruko and Hinata chatted cheerfully as they made their way toward Hikaru's, with Kushina and Rin close behind, occasionally redirecting Anko whenever she got too captivated by the shiny tools displayed at various booths. After a few minutes of lively conversation and laughter, the group finally arrived at the restaurant. Hikaru's was an elegant, two-story restaurant known for its extensive menu, impressively swift kitchen staff, and the fact that, unless you had a reservation made a month in advance, it was nearly impossible to get a table after 4 in the afternoon. However, the Akamiki clan, and Naruko, were among its most valued guests, so a large table was always kept available just in case they decided to stop by. Hey, Naruko. You made it. Hinata looked up as Naruko laughed and jogged ahead toward the entrance, where Kuji stood without his usual snack in hand. The two friends greeted each other with a cheerful hug just as the rest of the kunoichi caught up. It's about time, Naruko. My dad's already inside waiting for us. He saved our usual table and even ordered the appetizer spread. Shikamaru and his father aren't joining you this time, Kuji-kun? Kushina asked warmly as she reached the doorway. Rin and Anko, walking beside her, were giggling with Hinata over a shared joke. Kuji shook his head. Not this time. Shikamaru's mom wanted to celebrate his graduation at home. Well, we can probably guess how enthusiastic he was about that, Naruko said with a playful grin. Anko smirked. More food for us, then. Let's get some dango and celebrate in style. With that, Anko led the way into the restaurant, closely followed by Naruko and Kuji. Hinata was about to go in as well when she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. Turning, she saw Kushina. Why don't you and Rin head inside, Hinata? I'll wait here for Kiba and his sister. Just a heads up though, my daughter has quite the appetite, so don't be too surprised by what you're about to see. She and Kuji have a long-standing friendly competition whenever they come here. Kushina laughed and took a seat on a nearby bench to wait. Hinata thought about what she said, smiled, and then allowed Rin to grab her by the arm and tug her toward the entrance. If we don't hurry, those two might finish everything before we get a taste, Rin said, pulling Hinata along. Inside, Hinata was greeted by an impressive sight, what looked like a feast worthy of a festival. A massive table was filled with trays of appetizers, from sushi and grilled skewers to fried dumplings, and a stunning 3-tier tray piled high with 6 varieties of dango. Anko had gone straight for the dango, while Naruko and Kuji sat beside Kuji's father, happily enjoying the meal. Hinata took a seat near Naruko, brushing her hair over her shoulder as she picked up a delicate pastry. She was pleasantly surprised to find that, while the outer layer was sweet, the inside had a flavorful, savory filling. Looking back at Naruko and Kuji, she noticed each of them had a full tray of those same pastries and were eating enthusiastically. Let's go, everyone. Eat up. We've got to clear the appetizers before the main courses arrive. Kuji's father, was equally energetic in his dining, and so was Anko, particularly when it came to dango and the sake, which she appeared to be enjoying quite a bit. Hinata raised an eyebrow when she noticed 4 bottles of sake in front of Anko, one already empty. How is she still sitting upright? Hinata wondered. Just then, the doors swung open. I have arrived, came a confident voice, followed instantly by a small commotion as Hana playfully knocked her younger brother Kiba on the head. Keep it down, she said lightly. Kushina followed them in with a smile, clearly amused. Everyone at the table laughed as Kiba took a seat across from Naruko, eagerly rubbing his hands together. Itadakimasu, he announced, with Akamaru letting out a cheerful bark in agreement. Hinata giggled as Kiba and Akamaru dove into a tray of crispy chicken. Around the table, conversations picked up among the 5 kunoichi while a spirited eating challenge played out between Naruko, Kuji, and Kuza. To Hinata's surprise, Naruko was holding her own, even pulling ahead of the famously enthusiastic Akamiki duo. Kiba had paused mid-bite, staring in astonishment. Who would have thought Naruko could outpace even Kuza-san? Just then, a graceful brunette in a fine kimono approached the table, carrying a notepad and pen. A faint wisp of smoke rose from the elegant pipe in her other hand. She looked ready to take their orders. As she neared, Kushina stood up with delight and immediately enveloped the woman in a warm hug. Hikaru. The woman gave a small sigh under Kushina's enthusiastic embrace. Naruko chuckled quietly, she knew that look well. Oyama Hikaru, the restaurant's owner, was one of the few people used to Kushina's exuberant affection. Kushina. How many times have I asked you not to do that? It's a bit much. Kushina offered an apologetic grin, and Hikaru, after taking a deep breath, softened. Anyway, Hikaru continued, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get to the fun part. I bet I already know your order, Kushina. Kushina laughed as the conversation continued, the warmth of friendship filling the cozy, bustling restaurant. As well as those of the two Akimichis. They hadn't changed their usual order in the 5 years they'd been regulars here. Hikaru snorted when Kwuza and his son looked up from their plates with broad smiles. And let me guess, you'd like a tray of smoked salmon, 6 trays of barbecue beef, and the unlimited rice combo, am I right? Naruko's answering grin told her everything she needed to know. Kiba and Hinata glanced at her in confusion. As Hikaru moved on, they leaned in and asked simultaneously, what's an unlimited rice combo? Naruko smiled and replied quietly, it's a bottomless supply of 3 types of rice, sticky, fried, and a sweet spicy one. Perfect for someone like me. I have a really fast metabolism, so I burn through food with all the training I do. I swear, if she and my mom weren't old friends, Hikaru would have banned me for Lee, ow. Naruko's comment was cut short by Hikaru grabbing her ear with a quick tug. Don't call me Oba-chan, she said, letting go. Naruko rubbed her ear with a small mutter of ow as Hikaru turned to Hinata. So, miss, what'll it be? Hinata thought for a moment. Do you have sukiyaki? Hikaru smiled. We sure do. It's one of our top dishes after the smoked salmon and barbecue beef, especially once you remove the Akimaikas and Naruko from the equation. The whole table laughed at that. Just then, Hikaru turned to ask Kiba for his order when Hana suddenly gasped, jumped up from her seat, and ran toward the entrance. Everyone paused and turned to see what had caught her attention. They saw Hana embrace Mizuki warmly and share a sweet kiss. Kiba frowned slightly while Hinata's smile faded a little. She noticed Naruko's expression briefly faltered before returning to her usual cheerful demeanor. Hinata wondered why Naruko was so used to keeping such a carefully maintained smile, but the moment passed as Hana led Mizuki over to the table. Everyone, this is my boyfriend, Mizuki. I know most of you already know him, but Uzumaki-san, Rin-san, Mizuki is one of the academy instructors. He was one of the 2 proctors for the Jinan exam your daughter Kushina took. Kushina and Rin nodded and greeted him politely as Mizuki took a seat next to Hana. He received a wary look from Kiba and smiles from most others. Mizuki assumed Kiba's attitude was just overprotectiveness and didn't dwell on it. The food arrived swiftly. Everyone except Kushina, Rin, and Anko was taken aback by the enormous quantity of food consumed by the 2 Akimaikas and Naruko. Even Kiba, who Hana always joked had an endless stomach, couldn't keep up. Anko was practically giddy with her food, though not tearing into anything aggressive like some might expect. Instead, she was working through a colorful array of dango and fiercely guarding her plate from curious hands. Hinata felt a twinge of envy when Anko teased Naruko by slowly enjoying a bite of dango and winking playfully. Naruko, for her part, didn't seem to notice. When the meal neared its end and desserts were on their way, the table was filled with satisfied diners sipping drinks and chatting. Hinata turned to ask Naruko something, only to pause at the towering stack of 20 empty bowls beside her and the clean trays that once held her food. Before Hinata could speak, Naruko stood up. Excuse me for a moment, I'll be right back, she said, making her way to the restroom. A few minutes later, Mizuki also excused himself. Hinata and Kiba exchanged glances, and with a small nod from him, she quietly followed. Once in the women's restroom, Hinata activated her Byakugan and discreetly observed the men's restroom to keep an eye on Mizuki. Inside, Naruko was washing her hands as Mizuki struck up conversation. Hinata focused, reading lips carefully. You know, Naruko, Mizuki began, I was genuinely impressed by your performance in the Jinan exam. While you didn't perform the assigned technique, we still awarded you bonus points for completing a much more advanced one. But I'm curious, how did you even learn it? Last I heard, that technique was locked away in a scroll within the Hokage's tower. Hinata's eyes widened slightly, but she kept her attention focused as Naruko replied calmly. Actually, Mizuki-sensei, there's a second scroll. The Hokage had it made years ago for my mother, so she could teach me those techniques when I was older. He believed that, as the child of the fourth Hokage, it was important that I had access to my family's legacy. Mizuki, unaware that Naruko could sense the shift in his tone, didn't hide his intrigue well. It's in the Namikaze library now, mostly just decorative at this point. I've already learned everything from it that I can handle right now. The rest will have to wait until I'm ready. With that, Naruko dried her hands. Anyway, my dessert's probably at the table by now. Better get to it before Kuji gets any ideas. As she left, Mizuki stayed behind, lost in thought. Hinata noticed a sly smile flicker across Naruko's face as she stepped out. Hinata deactivated her Byakugan and quietly followed. About half an hour later, the group had finished their meal and began to leave. Kushina and Kuza covered the bill, earning cheers from the younger group. Rin remained in conversation with the Akimaikas about nutritional techniques and chakra development. Naruko rubbed her full belly with satisfaction while Akamaru dozed on Kiba's head. As Anko finished her last bite of dango, she rushed over and hugged Naruko from behind. Hinata's cheeks puffed slightly as Anko's overly friendly gesture caused Naruko to chuckle. "Congrats, kid, you're officially a shinobi now." Before Hinata could act, Anko let go and took a small step back. "Yeah, Naruko, we did it." Kiba cheered, offering a high five, which Naruko happily returned. Behind him, Hana and Mizuki shared a fond farewell. "I've got patrol duty tonight, love. Don't want to keep Hayate waiting," Mizuki said, smiling as he stepped back and vaulted onto a rooftop. Everyone waved farewell, except Naruko, Kiba, and Hinata, who exchanged quiet, thoughtful glances before Hana tugged her brother away, claiming she needed to check on Kuromaru's new puppies. "Thank you for the meal," Hinata said respectfully, giving Kushina a quick bow. "I should head home before it gets too late. See you tomorrow, Naruko." With a warm smile, she dashed off toward the Hyuga compound. Meanwhile, Rin had finished chatting with the Akimaikas and rejoined Naruko, Kushina, and Anko. The Akimaikas wandered off, still laughing as they made their way home. Naruko now wore one of her familiar smirks, the playful one that always carried a hint of something deeper. Rin and the others picked up on it immediately, and in a flash, they were moving through the streets, heading toward the Namikaze compound on the edge of the forest. Though Naruko hadn't said a word, they all knew it was serious. Whatever was coming, they'd discuss it safely behind the protective seals of the compound. Far above, on the second floor of Hikaru's restaurant, a figure stepped onto the balcony. Moonlight caught the delicate gold and silver marks on her face. Hikaru stood beside her, arms crossed, a faint smile on her lips. "Quite the girl, isn't she, Kabatsu Dono?" Hikaru said. The cloaked figure of Kabatsu Kora gave a nod. "That she is, Hikaru-san. That she is." The night wind whispered through the trees, and the distant cry of a hawk echoed under the moonlit sky. Uzumaki Namikaze compound, outside Konoha, midnight. A shadowy figure moved swiftly and silently toward the tall perimeter wall of the Uzumaki Namikaze compound. As the figure reached the barrier, a series of hand signs disrupted a subtle illusion, revealing the wall's true height and the defensive structures along its edge. Without hesitation, the figure leapt up and over, expertly avoiding the barriers. Upon landing inside the courtyard, the figure tossed a handful of shuriken to draw out the compound's security measures. Traps responded as expected, but the intruder was nimble, weaving between the threats and making her way toward the building clearly marked as the library. She deflected incoming kunai and shuriken with precision, moving swiftly through an open window into the quiet, dark room beyond. At the back of the library sat a scroll displayed on a small pedestal. The figure approached with sharp caution, eyes scanning for hidden mechanisms. Finding none, she moved to retrieve the scroll, only to watch it vanish in a puff of smoke. What in the world? The pedestal was replaced by Naruko Uzumaki, standing calmly with focused eyes. "Not so fast, Mizuki," Naruko said firmly. "This scroll is protected, and not for anyone with dishonest intentions." A gentle but strong wave of chakra began to roll off Naruko, her determined expression causing Mizuki to hesitate. "Let's see what you've got." Shadow Clone Jutsu. In an instant, dozens of Naruko's clones appeared around the room, each one brimming with silent strength. Mizuki faltered for a moment but quickly regained his stance, drawing his weapons. "How did you know I'd be here?" he asked. Naruko gave a knowing smile. "You weren't exactly subtle. The moment you tried to mislead me during the Jinan exam, I realized something was off. When you brought up the scroll, I played along. But you were too eager to believe I was just a clueless girl. The Hokage is already aware of what's happening, and Anbu are on their way. Mizuki spun his weapons and charged. You're still just a kid. Naruko stood her ground. I know many people fear what's sealed inside me, she said softly, but that fear doesn't define me. I'm here to protect this village. Just as Mizuki's weapons closed in, Naruko vanished, just a clone. Her voice echoed across the room. I won't let people like you endanger everything we hold dear. If you care about this village, you'll stop now. Mizuki turned toward her voice but was immediately intercepted by a precise combination of blocks and strikes from the real Naruko, disarming him and sending him tumbling back. His shuriken struck a few clones, which vanished harmlessly. Hokage's office. Inside the Hokage's office, Sarutobi and several Anbu observed the scene through a viewing orb. Inuzuka Hana stood under light supervision, her connection to Mizuki having prompted questions. However, her shock and sorrow made it clear she had no part in his actions. A nod from Ibiki confirmed her innocence. As Mizuki stood to fight again, preparing to launch a final attack on Naruko, a shadow appeared behind him, a perfect replica of Hana. Mizuki, the illusion spoke in Hana's voice. Why are you doing this? You know Naruko isn't what you claim. Why betray the village? Mizuki froze. Hana? You weren't supposed to be here. No, I wasn't, came Naruko's voice, revealing that the illusion was her doing. The distraction gave her the moment she needed. Mizuki turned too late. Clang. Naruko redirected Mizuki's own weapon with expert timing, disarming him once more. He fell, stunned and pinned in place by precision-thrown needles from her clones. Naruko approached calmly. You misunderstood everything. I'm not a threat to this village, I'm a protector. My parents gave everything to ensure this place would be safe. I will continue that legacy. The presence within her, powerful and ancient, remained quiet as she acted with confidence and clarity. You assumed I wouldn't know the truth, she said. But I do. And I've learned to work with it, not fear it. With a light touch, Naruko placed her fingers across key points on Mizuki's forehead. Lightning release, gentle current. A focused pulse of chakra surged through Mizuki, knocking him unconscious. She carefully removed the surrounding weapons to ensure he would remain unharmed and ready for questioning. Her clone stayed behind to guard him until Anbu arrived. Outside the library, Naruko stepped into the moonlight, welcomed into the arms of her mother and aunt, both of whom had waited anxiously nearby. Back in the Hokage's office, Hana, overwhelmed by emotion, leaned on Iruka for comfort. Ibiki watched quietly until a slight smirk broke his expression. The Hokage raised an eyebrow. What's amusing, Ibiki? Ibiki simply pointed to Mizuki's collapsed form. Upon closer inspection, it became obvious, he had been so overwhelmed by fear, he lost control of his nerves. A few of the Anbu chuckled softly, and even the Hokage sighed with a small smile. Seems young Naruko will be quite the force in this village, he said, taking a thoughtful puff of his pipe. The sun rose gently over the bustling Hidden Leaf village. Market stalls opened with clattering shutters, and merchants moved quickly to prepare for the day's business. All around the village, 30 newly promoted Genin were waking up, stretching, and preparing for a day filled with excitement. They were to receive their team assignments today. In one room, filled with soft pinks and floral accents, a pink-haired kunoichi admired herself in the mirror and exclaimed confidently, "Yes. Today, I just know I'll be assigned to a team with Sasuke-kun." Inside her mind, a cartoonish version of herself echoed dramatically, "For sure." Elsewhere, within the quiet and structured domain of the Aburame clan, a black-haired Genin with dark sunglasses tended to insect hives in a cool, shaded shed. This was known as the hive, a well-kept and orderly section of their compound. His mind was focused entirely on caring for his insects, team placements could wait. At a graceful and traditional estate in the heart of the older Konoha district, a kunoichi with lavender hair adjusted her pale purple and white jacket. She smiled in the mirror as she tied her forehead protector around her neck, whispering a small hope, "Please let me be on Naruko's team." In a cheerful flower shop, a blonde kunoichi waved goodbye to her father and dashed out, her golden hair streaming behind her. "I can't believe that new girl noticed my skills," she thought. Sasuke never even says anything. In a modest house near Konoha's hospital, a groggy orange-haired boy was dragged out of bed by a determined kunoichi and a red-haired teammate. "Come on, Ichigo, we'll be late if we let you sleep in again." Both quickly moved aside as a playful struggle began between Ichigo and his father, a doctor. The other two wisely made their escape before getting pulled into the daily antics. At a snack stand near the academy, two ninja munched on their food. One ate quietly, the other more energetically. The first muttered, "Troublesome," while the second grinned and continued eating. In a park nearby, a black-haired teen in a fur-lined coat played a lively game of chase with an enthusiastic white puppy. To the observer it seemed like a fun race, but for the two of them, it was training, a way to sharpen awareness of each other's movements. Back in the Uchiha district, a quiet figure with dark hair and a serious expression stepped outside in a blue shirt marked with the Uchiha symbol. He took a quick glance in the mirror to straighten his hair, then made his way toward the academy. Outside the village, at the Uzumaki Namikaze compound, joyful chaos was underway. Two kunoichi dashed after a giggling blonde girl holding a kunai. "Naruko. How many times do I have to tell you, no more water buckets over the door," Rin shouted as Naruko nimbly avoided her swing. Laughing, Naruko called back, "Come on. It's a classic. No chakra, no warning signs. I bet even the Hokage wouldn't see it coming." She was cut off as Kushina's kunai swiftly struck her, only for Naruko to vanish in a puff of smoke. Kushina sighed as she turned to Rin. "Did you really think Naruko didn't use a shadow clone for that? She's probably halfway to the village by now." Up on the roof, another clone chuckled and vanished. On the road to Konoha, Naruko herself laughed as the clone's memories reached her. Only mom would know for sure when I've used a clone. Well, she was married to someone who could prank even the best ninja, came a dry voice from within her. "Wait, Naruko." Naruko burst into giggles as she continued walking toward her team assignment. Outside Konoha Ninja Academy, Naruko landed beside her friends Kiba and Hinata with a cheerful whumph. Her forehead protector was tied securely to her arm, and a pair of sunglasses sat atop her head. "I got mom this morning with a prank, so today's already a success," Naruko said with a bright grin. "Glad you made it, Naruko," Kiba laughed. "Yes," Hinata added softly, blushing a little, "we should go inside. It's almost time." Akamaru barked happily and bounded forward, and the three friends entered the building with laughter. Behind a nearby tree, Uchiha Sasuke emerged with a smirk. "No way I'm being put on a team with her." Still smirking, he headed inside. Konoha Ninja Academy, Classroom A. Naruko, Kiba, and Hinata joined their classmates, who were already filling the room. Naruko waved to Kuji as they passed, and took a seat next to Ino. Hinata sat beside her, with Kiba on the other end of the row. Naruko glanced at Ino. I think her name is Ino. Surprised she isn't competing with Sakura for a seat by Sasuke. Oh, there he is. That explains it. Kiba nudged her. "Hey Naruko, you spaced out there. Everything okay?" Naruko blinked. "Oh, yeah. Just thinking." Hinata noticed Naruko glance at Ino and felt a flicker of jealousy. Why does everyone always notice Ino first? What does she have that I don't? She didn't realize that her modest clothing style kept others from noticing the grace and strength she was developing, unlike Ino's more fitted outfit. "So, Naruko," Kiba continued, "why the change? You wore your forehead protector on your head yesterday." Naruko chuckled. "It got in the way of my sunglasses, so I moved it to my arm for now. What about you, Hinata? Why around your neck?" Hinata looked down shyly before answering. "When I activate my family's technique, it puts a little pressure on my forehead. Wearing it around my neck felt more comfortable." Naruko tilted her head. "Maybe it was just tied a little too tightly?" Hinata blushed. "Oh. I hadn't thought of that." Kiba and Naruko laughed gently, and Hinata giggled along. On Naruko's other side, Ino kept sneaking glances at her, cheeks turning pink. Suddenly, a commotion near the door caught everyone's attention. Abarai Renji and Kuchiki Rukia entered, helping a bruised Ichigo, with Iruka walking behind them holding the assignment sheet. "Where's Mizuki-sensei?" Sakura asked. Iruka's face turned serious. "I regret to inform you that Mizuki was arrested last night after attempting something against the rules. Thankfully, one of your fellow classmates stepped in and prevented things from going further." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Who could have done something like that? Ichigo snorted in disbelief, and Sasuke narrowed his eyes, scanning the room. Naruko rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. Her friend stared at her, clearly already aware. Ino looked at the three of them curiously. "Wait. Were they involved? Was it Naruko?" Sakura raised her hand. "Iruka-sensei, may we ask who it was?" Iruka nodded. The student who intervened was Uzumaki Naruko. A wave of surprise echoed across the room. Whispers flew. "Isn't she the new one? How did she manage that?" Naruko noticed Shino giving her a subtle but respectful nod. Even Sasuke stared, eyes narrowing. That can't be right, he thought. She barely held her own in taijutsu. Someone else must have helped her and let her take the credit. Iruka cleared his throat. Now, let's move on to team placements. Iruka waited patiently until the room had quieted, then began the speech he had been trying to deliver earlier. Starting today, you are all official ninjas. However, you are still at the beginning level, as rookie Jinan. The real challenges are just beginning. The classroom immediately turned quiet, every student focusing on his words. You will soon begin receiving assignments from the village. Today, we will be forming 3-person squads. Each team will be guided by a jounin instructor, and you are to follow their guidance as you carry out your missions. We've tried to balance abilities so that each team is well-rounded. This announcement was followed by a wave of murmurs and a few loud exclamations of, "What?" Some students kept their thoughts to themselves. 3-person teams? That's just more people to slow me down, Sasuke thought. I hope I'm with Sasuke. I hope I'm with Sasuke, chanted both Sakura and her inner self. I hope I'm with Naruko. I hope I'm with Naruko, echoed both Hinata and Ino in their minds, although neither would ever guess the other was thinking the same. Please don't put me with Sakura, several boys silently hoped. Catching each other's expressions, they quickly looked away, silently agreeing without saying a word. I will now announce the teams, Iruka said, drawing everyone's full attention again. Team 1. Iruka began reading from a list. Team 7 is Haruno Sakura, Inuzuka Kiba, and Uchiha Sasuke. At this announcement, Sasuke gave a small nod, Sakura jumped up with a cheer, and Kiba sighed heavily, slumping onto his desk. Looks like you're stuck with the Uchiha. That's rough, Kiba, Naruko said sympathetically, giving Kiba a gentle pat on the back. Iruka cleared his throat again to continue. Team 7's jounin instructor will be Hatake Kakashi. Team 8 will consist of Yamanaka Ino, Hyuga Hinata, and Uzumaki Naruko. Naruko's ears were nearly overwhelmed by the enthusiastic yada. That came from both sides of her. Ino and Hinata immediately turned to glare at each other, both surprised by the other's reaction. Now it was Kiba's turn to offer sympathy. Wow, Naruko. Looks like your team's gonna be a handful, he said with a laugh, giving her a friendly pat on the shoulder. Naruko sighed in mild exasperation. Team 8's jounin instructor will be Yuhi Kurenai. Team 9 is already active, so we'll move on. Team 10 will be Aburame Shino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akamiki Kuji. Their instructor will be Sarutobi Asuma. Finally, Team 11 is Aburai Renji, Kochiki Rukia, and Kurosaki Ichigo. Their jounin instructor will be Gekko Hayate. Iruka folded the list and addressed the class again. Your instructors will meet you here this afternoon. Until then, you're free to take a break and relax. With a warm smile, Iruka left the room. Immediately, chatter broke out. Some students eagerly talked with their new teammates, while others wandered out of the room quietly. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as he stood and walked outside to enjoy the clouds. Kuji followed, happily munching on a snack, with Shino quietly bringing up the rear. Naruko noticed Sasuke watching her briefly, but her attention was pulled away when Kiba approached. Hey, I'm going to take Akamaru outside. You and Hinata should come join me for lunch. It'll be a good chance for the team to hang out, he said with a grin. Sounds good. We'll meet you there, Naruko replied cheerfully. Kiba exited with Akamaru through the window. Naruko turned to Ino, who still looked pleasantly surprised to be on the same team. Well, Ino, looks like we're teammates now. Honestly, I'm glad it's you and Hinata. Better than being with Sakura, who's still daydreaming about Sasuke all the time, Naruko said with a relaxed smile. I mean, come on. Just because his clan situation is complicated doesn't make him any more special than the rest of us. I've got plenty going on in my life too, and I'm still doing my best. Ino just smiled, still processing how Naruko, kind, determined, and full of energy, was actually talking to her so casually. Hinata, noticing the interaction, felt a slight twinge of jealousy. Quickly, she stepped forward and gently took Naruko's arm. Come on, Naruko, Ino, let's go find Kiba. We can have lunch together and talk about how we'll work as a team, she said, trying to sound calm while nudging them toward the door. Naruko turned to follow, but suddenly found herself face to face with a serious-looking Sasuke. What do you want, Sasuke? Naruko asked, her smile unwavering. Let's have a match, Sasuke replied plainly. Naruko and Sasuke exchanged a long glance while several enthusiastic members of Sasuke's fan club cheered him on. Behind Naruko, Ino and Hinata stood quietly, fingers crossed. Ino focused her attention on Sasuke, clearly unimpressed by his behavior, while Sakura looked between them in confusion. "Go, Sasuke," Sakura shouted, her voice ringing through the room. But inside, her thoughts told a different story. Ugh. Why is Ino looking at Sasuke like that? She's trying to act like she doesn't care, but she totally likes him too. Is she pretending to like Naruko just to get Sasuke jealous? Inner Sakura tended to exaggerate. Naruko finally blinked and responded calmly, "I don't see the point in challenging you, Uchiha Sasuke. We're both Genin of the Hidden Leaf Village. It's our responsibility to train diligently and stay healthy so we can carry out our missions. We shouldn't waste energy fighting amongst ourselves." Sasuke scoffed. "Humph. I knew it couldn't be true that you faced Mizuki. You're too timid, too weak. Someone else must have done the work and gave you the credit to hide your incompetence." Without another word, Sasuke turned and left the classroom, followed by Sakura and his usual group of admirers. Naruko, Ino, and Hinata remained silent until the group had completely left. Naruko finally stretched her arms and turned to the other two. "So, lunch, ladies?" Naruko said with a smile. Before she could react, both girls grabbed her by the arms and tugged her out of the classroom. Naruko, stunned, didn't resist. Minutes later, the three were sitting under a tree. Hinata and Ino stared at Naruko, waiting. Naruko let out a sigh. Okay. I'll explain what happened last night. Hinata, remember when I left to use the restroom at Hikaru's place? Hinata gave a small nod, blushing slightly. Ino, sensing something was going on, felt a flicker of envy that Hinata had been with Naruko the day before. Still, maybe I was too focused on Sasuke and missed my chance. Well, Naruko continued, Mizuki came to talk about my exam results. He seemed very curious about how I learned the shadow clone technique. I set a trap. I told him I found it in a special scroll locked away in the Hokage's office. I figured if he took the bait, someone would catch him. Both girls leaned in, wide-eyed. "And?" they asked in unison. Naruko hesitated. "When he tried to get the scroll, I confronted him. I had to hold my own until I saw a chance to stop him for good." Just then, Kiba landed beside them in a crouch. "What's with the long faces?" he asked, glancing at each of them. Naruko answered quietly. "I was just telling them about what happened last night." Kiba paused. "So, you really handled him?" Naruko nodded. "Yeah. But what?" Hinata asked softly. She had only recently gotten to know Naruko, but she could already tell something was troubling her. Ino gently took Naruko's hand. Hinata noticed, but didn't react. This moment was about Naruko, not herself. "There are some things I can't talk about. Not yet. Not here," Naruko said. "It's hard to even think about sometimes. For what it's worth, kid. I'm sorry things happen this way." Naruko was suddenly drawn into her inner mind, standing before the familiar iron bars that contain the 9 tails. "What do you mean, Kyubi?" Naruko asked, eyes on the ground. "This world drew us to it long ago. But something here affects us. It distorts us, twists our nature. Being sealed inside you has protected me from that." "But didn't you attack me the first time I came here? You interrupted me when I was already irritable. Can you blame me? Besides, by now you should know better than to disrupt a lady's rest." Naruko looked up, shocked. "Wait, you're a woman?" The Kyubi gave a low, amused snort. 4 years of conversations and only now you realize that? Good thing your teachers are smarter than you, kid. Now go. Your friends are worried about you. Naruko turned to see visions of her friends waving their hands in front of her face. As she returned to consciousness, she blinked and gave a sheepish smile. "Ah, sorry about that, everyone." "What happened?" Ino asked, genuinely concerned. She noticed the faint markings on Naruko's cheeks. "She looks kinda cool," she thought. Can we just say it's part of that thing I can't talk about yet?" Naruko said with a nervous laugh. Before anyone could respond, Sakura's voice called out, "Hey Kiba. You coming? We need to talk about team stuff." Kiba groaned. Fine. Guess I gotta go." As he stood to leave, Naruko called after him, "Hey, if you're free, wanna grab some ramen tonight at that spot you showed me?" Kiba smirked. "Sure, but I'm not paying. I've seen how much you eat." Naruko scratched the back of her head with a shy laugh. Wait. What did he mean by that? Ino asked. Hinata stepped in. Well. Naruko has a really fast metabolism, so she eats a lot. Don't be too surprised if it becomes a regular thing. Ino blinked. Hinata giggled and whispered, "You'll see." Naruko lost her balance in her chair and tumbled backwards onto the floor, still laughing as Asuma led his team out of the classroom, grumbling about mischievous blondes and overenthusiastic kunoichi. Naruko finally caught her breath just in time to hear Iruka introduce the woman at the front of the class as their new sensei, Yuhi Kurenai. Composing herself, she stood and followed her teammates down the steps to meet her. Naruko offered an apologetic grin when Kurenai gave her a disapproving look, having gathered from Asuma's complaints that she was likely the source of the earlier prank. Then something clicked in Kurenai's mind. This girl just used the shadow clone technique. Kurenai didn't let her surprise show as she led her new Jinan team outside to a grassy hilltop. Sitting down cross-legged on the grass, she watched as her 3 students joined her. Ino brushed herself off carefully before sitting, Hinata lowered herself smoothly with grace, and Naruko did a playful handstand before flipping into a seated position between her teammates, a wide grin on her face. Kurenai cleared her throat and began. Now, you already know my name, but I'd like for us all to introduce ourselves properly. I'll start. She smiled warmly at the group, wanting to set a friendly tone. I am Yuhi Kurenai. I specialize in genjutsu. I enjoy reading, salted octopus, and quiet evenings. I don't care for inappropriate behavior or overly sweet desserts. My dream is to one day develop a genjutsu that no one can break. She was pleased to see that all 3, including the spirited Naruko, were listening attentively. Now, why don't you go next? She said, nodding to Ino. According to the files, Ino was known more for her appearance than her abilities and was part of a large group who had shown interest in a certain classmate. Kurenai braced herself. I'm Yamanaka Ino. I don't think I'm amazing at everything, but I'm good at throwing weapons. Her honesty caught Kurenai by surprise. I like flowers, learning with my dad, and... well, I'm still figuring out what I dislike. My dream is to become a strong kunoichi, master my clan's techniques, and maybe, someday, marry a fellow shinobi who's kind and dependable. Kurenai noted the glance Ino sent Naruko's way as she said this and raised an eyebrow. A better focus than certain other obsessions, she mused. Kurenai was about to continue when Naruko chimed in next, her voice full of confidence. I'm Uzumaki Namikaze Naruko, daughter of the 4th Hokage and the last known heir of the Uzumaki clan. I love ramen, grilled meat, smoked salmon, taijutsu, and sweet dumplings. I really don't like unfair treatment or people who judge without understanding. My dream, she paused thoughtfully, is to become Hokage, rebuild my clan, and prove my worth to the entire village. Kurenai smiled, touched by Naruko's sincerity. Despite the way the villagers had treated her, she still wanted to protect them. She truly had the spirit of a leader. When a breeze blew a strand of Naruko's golden hair loose, Kurenai had a fleeting moment of déjà vu, remembering the 4th Hokage. That's a wonderful goal, Naruko, she said kindly. Naruko beamed, and both Hinata and Ino blushed slightly at her smile. So, you're not ready to share everything yet, the fox spirit inside Naruko mused. Later, Naruko thought back. When I know I can trust them, I'll invite them to the compound and tell them everything. Hinata spoke softly next. My name is Hinata. I like kind, cheerful people. I don't like cruelty. My dream is to become a strong kunoichi and stand proudly on my own. Kurenai noted Hinata's omission of her clan name, something she understood all too well from having once escorted Hinata as a chunin. That's a beautiful goal, Hinata, she said. Alright, we have a quick appointment to get your ninja ID photos taken, Kurenai added. Then we'll visit the Hokage. Tomorrow, we'll start our first official training. Make sure not to eat breakfast. Why not? Hinata asked curiously. Let's just say I'd rather not have anyone feel queasy during the first exercise, Kurenai replied with a grin. Later, in the Hokage's office, the team stood quietly as Sarutobi reviewed their files. Approved, he said at last. The Jinan sighed in relief. Thank you, Kurenai, Sarutobi said. I appreciate you helping with their photos, especially with our schedule being so tight. It was no trouble, Lord Hokage, Kurenai said. And Naruko's retake was worth the effort. Excellent. Bring your team back the day after tomorrow for your first mission, Sarutobi replied. Naruko cheered, and both Hinata and Ino smiled at her enthusiasm. As Kurenai gave final instructions to meet at Training Ground 20 the next morning, the office door slammed open. A boy in a long scarf stumbled in dramatically, demanding a fight with the Hokage before promptly tripping and falling. Everyone stared, perplexed. The boy jumped up angrily. Someone must have set a trap. There's no trap, a ninja in dark clothes and sunglasses said as he entered behind him. Are you all right? Who is this kid? Naruko asked, looking at the Hokage. I knew it. You're hiding something. The boy shouted, getting in Naruko's face. Without missing a beat, Naruko gently grabbed the front of his jacket and lifted him. Hey, that's the Hokage's grandson. The other man exclaimed. Naruko raised an eyebrow. Even so, he should show respect. Bursting in like this without a word of courtesy? That's no way to earn anyone's admiration. She set him down gently. You'll regret this. He's going to be the next Hokage. The man snapped. Naruko turned calmly to the man. And you are? I am Ebisu, elite tutor to the next generation of leaders. Then maybe you should teach respect before ambition, Naruko replied coolly. She turned back to the boy. Becoming Hokage takes hard work, not shortcuts. Then, with a polite bow, she addressed her team. Sorry, everyone. I need to cool off. I'll be at Ichiraku's at 6 if anyone wants to join me. Naruko performed a transformation technique, vanishing in a puff of smoke. A playful illusion appeared, which caused the Hokage and Ebisu to faint from surprise. Kurenai blinked, while Hinata and Ino had very different reactions. Hinata was flushed, while Ino shouted in exasperation. Perverts, Naruko's illusion quipped before disappearing and leaving the room. Kurenai sighed. I'll have a word with her about using that technique. Now, go on, enjoy the rest of your day. We start training tomorrow. Ichiraku Ramen Bar, 6 p.m. Later, Hinata and Ino found Naruko chatting with Kiba. And I still say the classics work best. A simple water trap got both my mom and Rin this morning, Naruko laughed. You shouldn't prank your mom, Naruko, Hinata chided gently as she sat. Seriously, what's wrong with you? Ino asked, sitting next to her and giving her a light smack on the head. Ow. Hey, only on deserving targets, okay? Naruko grinned. Like Mizuki. He was sabotaging me during exams. Ino looked at her, surprised. You used that technique on Mizuki? Naruko looked uncomfortable, but Hinata jumped in. He deserved it. Naruko didn't want to talk about it, but Mizuki had been targeting her. Oh, Ino murmured, feeling a little ashamed. As bowls of ramen arrived, Naruko beamed and dug in. Can you really eat all that? The chef asked. Naruko mumbled a confident reply through a mouthful of noodles. Ino gaped at the pile of empty bowls nearby. Later, the group chatted about teachers and expectations. Our sensei's odd, Kiba said. All we know is his name, and he wears a mask all the time. Naruko chuckled. He was one of my father's students. I've known him since I was little. Ino's jaw dropped. Wait, that's who the technique was made for? Naruko scratched her head. He always read those books instead of training me, so. Yeah. Hinata blushed at the mention of the books, her imagination running wild. Eventually, the evening wound down and everyone parted ways. Not long after, Ino nervously approached Hinata. Hinata. Can I talk to you? Of course, Ino-chan. You like Naruko too, don't you? Hinata was stunned but nodded slowly. Yes. Why do you ask? Ino looked determined. Because I like her too. She helped me see things more clearly. I was chasing someone just to compete. But Naruko, she's different. Hinata was surprised by her honesty, and the new challenge she suddenly felt rising between them. And I'm really glad I've gotten to know you better, Ino said, her voice more thoughtful than before. After finally coming to my senses, I've realized something. I want someone who can make me smile, who laughs freely, who treats me with kindness, even if they can be a little silly or make mistakes sometimes. So, just know this. If you want Naruko, you're going to have to match me. Hinata's soft and sincere laughter rang through the quiet air, surprising Ino. When she eventually calmed down, she gave Ino a knowing smile. Ino, do you understand what Naruko's position means? She asked gently. Ino blinked, clearly confused by the question. Naruko is the last remaining heir of not just one, but two important clans. When she turns 18, the traditional clan continuation laws will come into play. She may be encouraged to choose partners to help restore the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans. And knowing Naruko, she's not going to choose people just based on admiration. She'll want to be surrounded by strong, capable kunoichi who have earned their place beside her. That means we shouldn't be rivals, we should be improving ourselves. Ino took a moment to absorb the information before speaking. Wait. How do you know so much about clan law? You never seemed like the academic type, she said, still surprised. Hinata's smile faded. It's because. Someday, I hope to live life on my own terms. I've been studying everything I can about clan laws and policies. I want to make sure I can make my own choices, free from limitations. So far, I haven't found a way. But I'm not giving up. Her voice cracked slightly, and she lowered herself to her knees, emotions building. Ino quickly stepped forward and wrapped Hinata in a comforting hug. Hey, it's okay. You're a kunoichi of the leaf. I've got your back. And I'm sure Naruko will support you too. Just hang in there. They stayed in that embrace for a while before standing again. Hinata wiped the tears from her eyes. So, we're agreed? Ino asked, determination flashing in her eyes as she offered her hand. We'll both train to become the best kunoichi we can be, strong, independent, and worthy of Naruko's respect. It's agreed, Hinata nodded, her own expression firm. We'll be our best selves, and we won't let anyone else stand in the way. With a final nod, the two girls parted ways, their spirits renewed. Uzumaki Namikaze compound. Rin looked up from the sink as Naruko climbed in through the open window, a backpack full of food balanced on her shoulders. Welcome back, Naruko. Your mom's already gone to bed, Rin said with a smile. We missed you at dinner. Naruko gave a sheepish grin as she set the bag down. Sorry about that, Aunt Rin. I met up with my new teammates, and we ended up eating with Kiba. Poor guy got teamed up with the Uchiha and someone who can't stop following him around. Rin chuckled gently. Kiba's a good kid. And yes, I've heard about that Uchiha, rather serious from what I've been told. Yeah, Naruko replied as she unpacked. As for me, I got teamed up with Hinata and Ino. And honestly, I think Ino's finally moved on from obsessing over Sasuke. That's probably for the best. I just hope she doesn't redirect all that attention toward me now. I'm not a fan of that kind of admiration. I respect people who stand tall on their own. Rin nodded. Sounds like a promising team. Who's your instructor? Yuhi Kurenai. I hear she's really skilled, especially with genjutsu. Rin raised an eyebrow. Kurenai, yes. She's known for her illusion techniques. That might be a challenge for you. Naruko winced. I know. My chakra control still needs work. A familiar voice echoed in her mind. It's not entirely your fault, you know. As our chakra continues to blend, it'll get easier. Just be patient. I know. Naruko responded internally. It's just frustrating sometimes. Rin's laughter brought her back to the moment. Sorry, Naruko. I couldn't resist. After that prank you pulled this morning, I figured this was fair payback. Anyway, you should head to bed soon. Big day ahead of you tomorrow. Don't forget, you're meeting your mom and me at 6 for dinner at Hikaru's. Bring your teammates if you want. After that, we're taking you to your new apartment. Naruko's eyes lit up, and she rushed over, wrapping Rin in a hug. Thank you, she said excitedly. Rin smiled warmly. Your mom and I signed the lease earlier today. We're having some furniture delivered, and we'll move in your things. Now that you're an active kunoichi, it just makes more sense for you to live in the village rather than way out here. Go get some rest, alright? You'll need it. With one more grateful shout of thanks, Naruko dashed out of the kitchen. Rin chuckled softly and turned back to putting away the groceries, a content smile on her face. The members of Team 8 met promptly at 9 the next morning at training ground number 20. Naruko was the first to arrive, and she spent a few minutes before the others showed up, observing the terrain out of curiosity. A few moments later, Hinata and Ino arrived together, chatting animatedly about some topic, though Naruko couldn't hear them from where she stood. She hopped down and walked over to join them, eager to wait for their sensei. Precisely at 9 a.m., Kurenai appeared before her students with a leaf shunshine. All three genin stood at attention immediately, and Kurenai gave them a slight nod in acknowledgement. Now, listen up, she said firmly. Training Ground 20 is a variable terrain area with open spaces and clusters of large boulders. Today's exercise will be your final test, and it has a fail rate of over 66%. It is already guaranteed that at least one of you will fail. What? Ino exclaimed loudly, her eyes wide with shock. What do you mean? I thought we already took all our exams. Kurenai took a deep breath before continuing. All those tests were designed to determine if you had what it takes to be a Genin. This is your real Genin exam. She held up her hand, 2 bells dangling from her fingers. The test is simple. You have until noon to get these bells from me. Those who manage to take a bell will pass and get lunch. Those who fail will be tied to a post while the others eat lunch, then sent back to the academy for another year. There are only 2 bells, so at least one of you will fail. Kurenai observed her students. Ino looked frustrated, Hinata seemed hesitant, and Naruko was smirking. Kurenai mentally sighed. How was she going to get these 3 to work as a team with their various hang-ups? Your exam starts now. Kurenai punctuated this last part by turning on a timer and disappearing in a leaf sunshine. From her hiding spot, Kurenai watched as her team quickly began scanning their surroundings before turning to each other. Well, what do you think? Naruko asked confidently. I don't believe this whole one person will fail idea. My mom always told me that Genin teams are chosen to balance abilities, so no way would they set up a test where 2/3 of the team fails. Naruko closed her eyes and waited for her teammates' responses. After a moment, Hinata spoke up. Naruko, I don't know if the threat of failing is real, but Iruka-sensei always taught us to take everything seriously as shinobi. We shouldn't assume this is a trick. Naruko hummed thoughtfully, looking down for a moment. How about this? Ino said with a grin. We make a pact. We work together to get the bells, and then we can leave the decision about who gets to eat and who gets tied to the post to a simple game of chance. Naruko and Hinata exchanged glances before turning back to Ino. If one of us is going to fail no matter what, we might as well work as a team to get the bells, then let fate decide who stays behind, Naruko said. Hinata's eyes lit up. I'm not just okay with this plan, she said with a grin. Let's get those bells and prove to Kurenai how silly that rule is. Hinata stuck her hand out, which was promptly joined by both Ino and Naruko. All 3 grinned at one another. Nearly 3 hours later, their efforts had yet to yield any results. No matter what they tried, Kurenai always seemed one step ahead, even when Hinata used her Byakugan to see through the genjutsu Kurenai was weaving. Currently, Naruko was hanging upside down 20 feet above the ground, trapped in a snare Kurenai had set. Ino was nursing a headache from a blow she took while trying to grab the bells, and Hinata was hidden in the bushes, thinking of a new approach. Time is running out, Hinata thought, frustrated. If we don't get those bells soon, we'll all fail. Just then, a beetle walked in front of her, writing a message in the dirt. Hinata activated her Byakugan and realized that Naruko had used a cage bunshine to transform into a beetle to send her a message. Impressive, she thought. You and Ino, go for a head-on pincer strike on Kurenai. Trust me. Hinata wiped the message away, motioned for Ino to follow her, and the 2 kunoichi moved into position. Without warning, Ino and Hinata launched themselves forward, dodging Kurenai's strikes and diving for the bells. But Kurenai performed a kawarimi just in time, leaving a log in her place. Now, Naruko shouted, performing a series of hand seals. Dai Cage Bunshine no Jutsu. The training ground was suddenly filled with thousands of cage bunshine. Hinata's Byakugan caught sight of Naruko amidst the clones, and for a moment, she was confused. 2 colors of chakra? She wondered. What does that mean? Then it clicked. A second later, 2 cage bunshine appeared, crawling toward the group with the bells in hand. Kurenai re-entered the clearing, but by then, the bells were in Ino and Hinata's hands. Naruko released her seal, and the clones quickly disappeared. Naruko cut herself down from the snare and walked over to her teammates, who had turned to look at her. You 2 earned it, Naruko said with a grin before they could protest. I can always retake the exam next year, but you both have something to prove. She was immediately bombarded with playful complaints from both Ino and Hinata, but Kurenai intervened. Congratulations. You all pass. Ino and Hinata paused, their fists centimeters from Naruko's face, looking back at their sensei. But, you said only 2 of us could pass, Ino said in confusion. Kurenai smiled softly. I lied. The real purpose of this exam was to test how you handle a situation where one must be sacrificed for the good of the team. It's about teamwork, not individual success. You 3 not only demonstrated that you can work together to achieve a goal, but you also used each other's abilities effectively. Kurenai was pleased to see that all 3 of her Genin were fully engaged. Hinata, great use of the Byakugan. Naruko, that was an inventive use of cage bunshine. And Ino, nice use of kunai and senbone to disable me. You just need to be a bit more subtle next time. Naruko scratched the back of her head, sheepish at the praise. And as a reward, I'm treating you all to lunch, Kurenai added with a smile. The announcement made all three cheer, and they eagerly made their way to the restaurant Kurenai had chosen. The restaurant, called Gilded Edge, catered specifically to Konoha shinobi. Kurenai explained that the owner had lost a leg in the last shinobi war and had retired to create a space designed for shinobi. The atmosphere was simple but sturdy, reflecting the practical nature of shinobi culture. While they waited for their meal, Kurenai outlined the training schedule for the coming weeks. You'll meet me at 9 a.m. every day at the entrance to Training Ground 16, Kurenai explained. We'll train together until noon, take a short break for lunch, then head to the Hokage's tower for a D-rank mission. Afterward, you'll have the rest of the day to yourselves, but I will assign individual tasks to each of you. Will we be working on anything specific? Ino asked curiously. Kurenai nodded. I'll help you discover where your strengths lie and help you improve on your weaknesses. The trio felt reassured and excited for the future. After finishing their meal, Kurenai dismissed them, reminding them to be at Training Ground 16 the next morning. Hinata quickly excused herself, eager to prepare for a clan gathering, while Ino and Naruko stood together in the quiet afternoon street. Ino smiled and looked at Naruko. Well, I think I'll head home, she said. The exam was a lot more exhausting than I expected. Naruko grinned. That's okay, Ino. I have some errands to run as well. I'll see you tomorrow though. Ino smiled and waved as they parted ways. She couldn't help but feel a warmth in her chest, eager to see her new friends the next morning. Naruko's new apartment, across the street from Hikaru's, 7 p.m. Finally, Naruko exclaimed, the last of her cage bunshine having just placed her new couch in position before dismissing them. Naruko dusted her hands off and then stepped back next to her mom and Rin, proudly admiring the fruits of 5 hours of hard work. Her apartment was now fully organized and decorated. She had a futon couch, a coffee table, and a few armchairs in her living room, along with several bookcases. Her kitchen was fully stocked, though Naruko wouldn't need to use it much, given she was living across the street from Hikaru's. Her clothes were neatly organized in her closet and dresser, and she even had a second closet for all her shinobi gear. Well, Naruko, it certainly looks organized enough. The only question is, how long will it stay that way? Kushina said with a smile. Naruko just snorted. Don't get your hopes up, Mom. You know better than anyone that Naruko and organized living spaces don't always go hand in hand, Rin added with a grin and a wink at Naruko. So, shall we eat dinner now that the table is finally set up? Both Naruko and Kushina agreed, and they quickly opened several sealed containers of food from Hikaru's. Naruko eagerly dug into a spicy chicken dish, while her aunt and mom chose the more mild beef teriyaki. After a few minutes of enthusiastic eating, Rin spoke up after taking a sip of her beer. So, Naruko, tell us, how did your first day go? Naruko nearly choked on her food. It took Rin and Kushina several seconds to realize she was trying not to laugh. When she finally calmed down, Naruko swallowed and took a deep breath. Well, I'm sure it won't come as any surprise to either of you, Naruko said, sending mock-accusing looks at both of them. But today was just another exam, one meant to test our effectiveness and ability to work together as a team. I mean, really Mom. You couldn't have given me some warning beforehand? Kushina smiled at her daughter. You know I couldn't have. The entire point of the exam is ruined if the subjects are informed about its true nature beforehand. Naruko sighed. Oh well. All's well that ends well. Naruko was interrupted by a yawn. And I guess that should be my cue to head to bed. Night, Mom. Night, Aunt Rin, Naruko said as she got up from the table. Good night, Naruko, they both replied as she trudged off to bed. When she was out of earshot, they resumed talking quietly. Is the reason she's so tired lately because of what Kyuubi's been doing to her chakra coils? Rin asked softly. Yes, Kushina replied. If I understand correctly, it's taking a lot of energy from Naruko to perform the adjustments, especially to do them safely. Once her coils stabilize, she'll get her full energy back. Even without that, it's unnoticeable to most people. Both women looked down at the table and sighed. Unbeknownst to them, a small red lizard had crawled into the apartment and overheard the entire exchange. As it crept back out to report to its master, it met an unfortunate end as a kunai, curved in an unusual way with an 8-pointed star inscribed on it, struck it cleanly. On the other side of the street, Oyama Hikaru flicked her wrist and drew the kunai back into a hidden holster under her jacket. Hokage's office, 9 p.m. The Sandaime Hokage sat wearily behind his desk. Before him stood 10 jounin instructors and Iruka, who was reading the collated report on the survival tests. Team 1. Failed. Team 2. Failed. It continued in this manner until Team 7 passed. Everyone in the room looked at Hatake Kakashi in surprise that he had passed a team. Sarutobi merely raised an eyebrow, pleased that Hatake took his request to train the last Uchiha seriously. Team 8 passed. With flying colors, I might add, Kurenai interjected, earning a quick glance from Iruka before he continued. Team 10 passed. Team 11 passed. Iruka finished speaking and rolled up the scroll. So, 4 teams out of 10. Not bad. Not bad at all. Tell me, what are your opinions so far of your teams? Sarutobi asked. A bunch of idiots, Hatake Kakashi spoke bluntly. Surprising and inventive, Yuhi Kurenai said proudly. Troublesome, Sarutobi Asuma said, not realizing he had picked up his student's favorite word after only a couple of hours. A bunch of misfits. I'm surprised they passed, Gekko Hayate finished with a cough. Sarutobi sighed and stamped several forms, speaking as he did so. Teams 7, 8, 10, and 11 are hereby officially convened under the listed Jounin instructors. The members therein are officially registered as Jounin of Konoha. Dismissed. The 10 Jounin dispersed in various ways, some walking out of the room, while others shunshined away. Iruka remained behind. Hokage-sama, I'm worried about Naruko, Iruka said after a few moments. Sarutobi looked up from the paperwork on his desk. I'm afraid that the social isolation she has been under, caused by the prejudice the village has against her, may lead to her lashing out. Sarutobi could see that Iruka was genuinely concerned. After a long moment, Sarutobi finally replied. I don't think we have anything to worry about, Iruka. Despite everything the villagers think about her, she still views it as her duty to protect Konoha, just like her father before her. The Hokage went back to smoking his pipe as he returned his focus to the ever-piling paperwork. The next morning, Naruko arrived at Training Ground 16 to find Hinata and Ino already waiting for her. The 2 kunoichi smiled and waved at her as she walked between the posts. Naruko smiled and waved back before dropping her pack on the ground and quickly began a series of push-ups. When she looked up a few moments later, she stopped, seeing the confused looks on both Hinata and Ino's faces. What? She asked, you didn't think I was just naturally in this kind of shape, did you? I work out a lot. Naruko grinned and pushed off with her feet, ending in a handstand before she removed one hand from the ground, balancing on a single hand. My dream is to be Hokage one day, after all. That means I need to be the strongest ninja. Naruko gave both girls a fox-like grin before she closed her eyes and began performing hand seals with one hand while continuing her one-handed push-ups. Hinata and Ino just stared in shock before turning slowly to look at one another. Both girls shared the same thought. Impressive. Their thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Kurenai, striding confidently between the 2 posts Naruko had entered earlier. As Naruko launched into the air and performed a flip before landing on her feet, she noticed that her new sensei had several scrolls under her left arm and a few small cream-colored cards in her right hand. Good morning, team. I trust all of you are ready for your evaluations? Kurenai said as she approached, setting down the scrolls and the cream-colored cards. Now, first, I need to know what jutsus you all know. It will give me an idea of where your skills with jutsu are, and it will serve as a foundation for me to plan out your training. Naruko, why don't you go first? Naruko grinned and took a seat in front of Kurenai as she sat down. Ino and Hinata walked over and joined her. Once they were settled, waiting for their turn, Naruko began. Well, let's see. There's the Academy Jutsus of course, Bunshine, Henge, and Nawanuke. I also know Tajuu Kage Bunshine no Jutsu, Kawarimi, Saiki no Jutsu. All 3 kunoichi groaned at the mention of that jutsu. Raiten, Dengeki Haku, and Shinayashu, Naruko finished, smiling. Kurenai had to blink at this last one. Did you just say, Shinayashu? She inquired, suspicious. Naruko sheepishly scratched the back of her head. Yeah. Why? Kurenai studied her with a calculating gaze for a moment. How, may I ask, do you know that jutsu? She finally asked. Naruko looked at her with confusion. How? Didn't it say in my file, Kurenai-sensei? I received specialized training from Mitarashi Anko for most of the past year. Kurenai shook her head, sighing. No matter where I go, she still manages to reach me. I swear, Kami must have it in for me, she thought. Naruko-chan, why is sensei surprised that you know it? Hinata asked. Kurenai looked up from her musings and watched as Naruko replied. As she did, she finally took a closer look at Hinata. She had escorted her to the academy when she was younger, but there was barely a trace remaining of the shy, timid girl she remembered. Well, probably because it's a rare jutsu, and only a few jounins know it, that's all, Naruko replied, shrugging her shoulders. Well, interesting, Naruko. Now, Hinata, how about you? Hinata took a breath before speaking confidently. I don't want to seem timid in front of Naruko. Hinata thought. Well, I know all 3 academy jutsus as well. And, well, I also know one of my family's special techniques, Haki Rakujuion Sho. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Getting nervous isn't going to do me any good, Hinata thought to herself. Kurenai blinked. She knows the Haki Rakujuion Sho? Her chakra control must be impressive, even for a Hyuga, she thought. Very impressive as well, Hinata. And you, Ino? Ino grinned and leaned forward on her knees, excited for her turn. I hope Naruko is impressed by what I know. I know all 3 academy jutsus as well, sensei. On top of that, I also know my family's Shintenshin no Jutsu, and my father has been teaching me Kawarimi, though I'm having trouble mastering it. Ino-chan, Naruko interrupted, have you tried visualizing yourself in the object's place rather than the object in your place? Ino looked at Naruko blankly for a moment before replying. No. My dad says you're supposed to visualize the object in your place. He says doing this when you perform the jutsu correctly will cause you to switch places with the object. Kurenai was the one to reply, having understood what Naruko was getting at. While that is technically true, Ino, there are some people for whom that just doesn't work. For some, like Naruko, I'm guessing. Naruko's sheepish grin confirmed her suspicions, and now possibly you, imagining yourself in the object's place is actually easier, as you are focusing on your movement and letting the object be swapped by the chakra, rather than using more chakra to force the object to come to you and then switch. She looked at Naruko again. I'm impressed, Naruko. Most shinobi aren't aware of the distinction. I'm guessing you had your own trouble mastering the technique as well? Naruko just nodded. Ino's embarrassment at having trouble with it evaporated as she realized that the girl she now admired had difficulty learning it as well. Hinata, meanwhile, felt embarrassed that she hadn't learned the jutsu either. That afternoon, Team 8 gathered in the Hokage's office for their first mission. The 3 Shinan were eager, but their excitement quickly faded as they learned the mission was a D-rank task, not much more than a simple chore. They were assigned to help repair a bar that had been damaged the previous week in an unfortunate incident involving some shinobi. Kurenai raised an eyebrow when Naruko let out a loud laugh upon hearing the name of the bar. She quickly realized that Anko must have told Naruko about the incident, as she had been part of the event. Kurenai privately thanked her decision to not go out that night, or she might have found herself involved as well. As the team worked on fixing the bar, Kurenai quietly reflected on how fortunate she was to have 3 dedicated and focused shinobi to train. The next few weeks followed a predictable routine. In the mornings, Kurenai had them working on sparring, chakra control exercises, and lessons on shinobi tactics and jutsus. With Naruko, she spent extra time sparring and refining her skills. 2 weeks into the routine, Kurenai was surprised when she arrived early one morning to find Naruko already there, surrounded by 50 clones all meditating. When Kurenai asked what they were doing, Naruko simply replied that she was communing. Kurenai immediately understood that Naruko was likely referring to her bond with the Kyuubi. But when Kurenai inquired further, Naruko explained that the clones weren't meditating but rather thinking about jutsu modifications and applications. Naruko had an idea for a new technique, but she wanted to think through various permutations before attempting it. Kurenai was astonished. She had never expected Naruko to be so casual about developing new jutsu. Given the young shinobi's unusual talents, however, Kurenai didn't doubt that Naruko could pull it off. 3 weeks into their training, Kurenai began to focus on one of her specialties, genjutsu. She gathered her students in a grassy area of the training grounds and began her lecture. Genjutsu differs from ninjutsu in that it manipulates a person's perception of reality, rather than performing direct attacks or altering the environment, Kurenai explained, glad to share her expertise. She noticed her students' rapt attention. Does that mean genjutsu aren't typically used in combat? Ino asked with curiosity. Quite the opposite, Kurenai replied. Properly applied, genjutsu can give a ninja a significant advantage. Some of the more advanced genjutsu techniques can even incapacitate or subdue an opponent through the power of suggestion. Naruko, who had been listening intently, grinned and turned to Hinata. I guess this is pretty boring for you, huh? Since you can see through most genjutsu with your Byakugan? Hinata blushed, and Kurenai noticed Ino cast a jealous glance at her. Kurenai mentally sighed at the budding tension between the two girls, even though Naruko seemed completely oblivious to it. Later, Kurenai elaborated on the ways to break genjutsu. The first method involves temporarily suppressing your chakra to break the genjutsu's hold. However, if the genjutsu is tied to natural chakra or another ninja's chakra, this may not be enough. Naruko, always keen to test her skills, was soon asked to demonstrate a technique. She grinned and transformed into a copy of Sasuke using the Henge Jutsu. Kurenai explained how Hinata, with her Byakugan, could see through the transformation. But when Kurenai used a simple Kai technique to dispel the illusion, Naruko's transformation vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruko raised her hand. Kurenai-sensei, I can't suppress my chakra, and my control isn't precise enough for the second method. Are there any other ways to break a genjutsu? Kurenai considered Naruko's question and replied, well, the third method involves using a large burst of chakra to disrupt a genjutsu, but it requires immense chakra control. Naruko then demonstrated a unique ability. She pressed her hand on a kunai transformed into a brick, releasing a pulse of chakra that dispelled the illusion. Kurenai was impressed, realizing that this technique was a variant of the third method. It was difficult and rare, requiring great chakra reserves. I've never seen anything like it, Kurenai commented. This technique is similar to the Hyuga clan's gentle fist, except it uses chakra in a wave to dispel genjutsu. Hinata, you may be able to learn this method as well. Naruko's skill left her fellow students in awe, and Kurenai spent the rest of the morning refining their ability to break genjutsu. Ino caught on quickly, mastering the Kai technique almost immediately. Hinata managed a few successful pulses of chakra, while Naruko's display was so powerful that passing Onbu members came to investigate. Kurenai had to explain to them that it was an accidental chakra surge from a training session. That evening, Kiba laughed uproariously when Naruko shared her latest prank with him, a sign that their teamwork was beginning to strengthen. 2 days later, in northern Wind Country, a group of Iwa Nin hastily made their way toward the border. Leading them was Shiseiji Yogoro, disguised as Asuna Onbu. He was followed by 3 other Iwa Nin, one of whom carried an unconscious and bundled blonde kunoichi. Yogoro's plan was to escape through the redwood forests of Hoshi no Kuni without being detected. His mission was dangerous, but if all went well, they would make it to safety before the Sunagakure forces could catch up. However, their journey was interrupted when a towering stone wall rose before them, and a gruff voice from the base of the wall demanded, "State your business, Shiseiji Yogoro." Yogoro's anger flared, but one of his companions calmly reminded him, "Sir, you've done it again." Yogoro blinked and looked around nervously. He had the misfortune of being named by an uncle who had been a bit too playful with his choice of name. He had been named after a nickname his uncle had earned in an earlier conflict. Ahem, the Nagaraboshi Nin cleared his throat. Yogoro turned his attention back to the man standing before him. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a solid build, clearly strong. He wore intricate black armor with the crest of the Nagaraboshi Kakujiman clan, a group known for their Doten techniques, emblazoned in green, and carried a large sword on his back. His long, wild brown hair flowed freely, and his face was adorned with a series of red markings. His headband, wrapped around his head, bore the kanji for turtle instead of the usual village symbol, indicating a unique rank and background. Despite his age, appearing to be in his 30s, his green eyes gleamed with a playful energy as the sun began to set. Yogoro immediately recognized him from an old bingo book, Kakujiman Isamu, the Iron Turtle. Isamu raised an eyebrow. I didn't realize I was so well known. Damn it, Isamu, Yogoro muttered, feeling the pressure. I have an important delivery to make, and I can't afford delays. Move aside and let us pass. Tell the Ryu that we'll pay the usual fee for using your country as a route. Isamu wagged his finger playfully. I'm afraid the Ryukage won't accept that this time. We've been sent on a mission to intercept you and recover your package. Yogoro's eyes narrowed, irritated not only at the interference but at the way the leader of his small village was referred to as Cage. He steadied himself, ready to act, noticing his team was also on edge, aware that Isamu wasn't alone. And who exactly gave you that mission? Yogoro asked, his tone sharp. From the Kazekage himself, Isamu replied coolly, his voice taking on a more serious edge. Ren, Sora, Arashi, by the order of the Ryukage, you are to assist us in recovering the target. The ground shifted as 3 more figures emerged, surrounding Yogoro and his team with impressive speed. The situation escalated quickly, but Yogoro focused on Isamu, preparing for the inevitable clash. Isamu smirked, sensing the tension. He swiftly made hand signs, and a massive armored turtle appeared with a puff of smoke. It blocked out the sun, its foot crashing down, knocking Yogor unconscious in an instant. "Checkmate," Isamu said softly, as he moved to pick up Naruko, who had been dropped to the ground during the chaos. He placed her gently on the turtle's head, nodding to his team as they continued to neutralize Yogor's squad. Meanwhile, Yogor's underlings were engaged in their own battles. Ishii was fighting the Katen user, Ken squared off with the Fuuten user, and Shin faced the Suten user. Despite their formidable abilities, they were struggling to match the strength and skill of their opponents. Ishii, ever brash, charged forward but was caught off guard as his opponent's chakra exploded in a violent display of elemental power. Ishii stumbled, but he quickly regained his footing, ready for the next round. His opponent, a young man with fiery red hair and striking heterochromatic eyes, stepped forward, his chakra pulsing in a rhythmic pattern. He didn't seem fazed by Ishii's attack. "You can't defeat me," Ishii boasted, though his confidence was waning. The young man smirked, his eyes gleaming with sharp focus. He didn't need to say a word. With a simple hand gesture, Ishii found himself overwhelmed by a powerful force, leaving him defeated and breathless. "Checkmate," the young man said, his voice calm and commanding. Ren, who had been battling the Suten user, found herself momentarily distracted by the ongoing clash between her teammates and the enemy. The fight wasn't as challenging as she had anticipated, and she was beginning to grow bored. However, her boredom soon turned to focus as her teammate, Arashi, intervened with a powerful electrical technique that incapacitated the enemy, securing their victory. "Good work, Arashi," Ren said with a smirk, appreciating his clever use of power. "Now, we just need to wrap up." Arashi, ever the cheerful one, grinned widely. "How about a date as a reward?" he asked, prompting Ren to playfully knock him back into the sand. "I told you before," she muttered. "Focus on the mission." With the threat neutralized, Isamu's team regrouped. They gathered around the captured Naruko, each member acknowledging their success in their own way. As they prepared to leave the battlefield, Isamu's voice crackled through their radios. "Report, team." "Ryao Kai," Ren responded. "We'll be bringing Naruko back soon." "Ren out." The team shared a brief moment of satisfaction as they gathered their strength and prepared for their next steps. This mission had been their first after returning from the hospital, and they had proven themselves capable. Dear YouTube family, that's all for today. If you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing updates. Thank you for your continued support. Best regards. 6 Path Weeb.